Worship Center kids for this Sunday lesson. You know, the past few weeks we've been learning about worship and all the different ways that we can worship. And we have learned that God is the only one worthy of worship. We have also learned the different ways, like when we can sing to Him, we can pray to Him, we can serve Him, we can give, we can worship by giving, we can worship by loving others, and we can worship by obeying Him. So all of those ways are ways that we can worship God. Today, we're going to talk about when we worship God. How many of you think about when you should worship God? We usually have times to do everything else. We have a time for school, we have a time for church, but what about a time to worship God? You know, when things are going great in our lives and we're having a good day and we can sing the song, "Everything is awesome," that is a great time to worship God. But what about when things aren't going so great? We still need to take time and worship God then. We should worship God in both good times and bad times. Worshiping God when things are good is usually a whole lot easier than worshiping God when things are going bad. But those are the moments when we really need to focus on God. Worshiping God will even help us through those dark times. Today, our story is about someone who experienced a really dark time. And now this story is found in the Old Testament in the book of Job. Yes, it is spelled J-O-B, and you think it's Job, but it's actually Job. Job was a good man. He was honest. He was trustworthy. He had a large family, and he was actually somewhat wealthy. He had quite a bit of money. Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he'd often have parties for them. You know, the Bible even says that he was a firm believer in God, and he would take some time to purify himself and his family just in case there was any sin around. This brought him attention, not from his neighbors, but from Satan. Yeah, how would you like to get Satan's attention? There was a meeting in heaven that Satan attended, and God explained that Job was a man full of integrity, and he feared God. Satan thought that God was playing favorites. Now, how many of you have ever thought that maybe your parents played favorites? Well, Satan thought God was playing favorites and that he had only had good things ever happen to him. He felt God had protected Job all of his life. And he thought that if Job went through bad times, that he would turn his back on God. But God knew differently. And God told Satan that he could test Job. Now, he said that he could do anything to him, but not touch him physically. That's when the sunny days that Job knew had ended, and they started to turn gray. His oxen and donkeys were stolen. Then a messenger arrived and told him that fire fell and burned all of his sheep and shepherds. As he was responding to that, another messenger came and told him that all of his camels had been stolen. That's all of his livestock. And still another messenger came and explained that his house had collapsed due to a mighty wind, and all of his children were killed. Job tore his robe and he shaved his head, and he fell to the ground to worship. He said that the Lord had given him what he had, and the Lord could take it away. He ended the prayer with the words, "Praise the name of the Lord." All of this bad stuff had happened to him. He had lost everything, and he was still praising God. That wasn't the outcome that Satan thought was going to happen. And so he called another meeting. And he said, I bet if he is touched in his body with sickness, he'll turn his back. So God allowed it. And God said, you can touch him, but do not bring death upon him. Satan got to work. He was stricken with boils, which are like blisters all over his body. He was miserable. Even his wife was fed up and said he should curse God and die. His friends came around, but they weren't coming to encourage him. They were actually ridiculing him and criticizing him because of how he was acting. But even though Job's world was wrecked, he had lost everything that belonged to him, he still cried out to God. And the Lord heard his prayers. Job prayed for not himself, but he prayed for his friends. And God restored all that he had lost. The Lord gave him twice as much as before. Job went through such a hard time, but still he worshiped God. He didn't stop worshiping because he fell on bad times. He knew that God blesses, but sometimes those blessings are taken away. He worshiped God in good times and bad. So I have some tools here. So I have this basketball. Now, in my hands, I paid about $25 for this basketball. But if you were to put it in somebody like LeBron James, this basketball would be worth about $30 million. In my hands, it's barely worth 25. But in somebody's hands like LeBron James, it'd be worth about $30 million. What about this football? I brought this football. Now, I have boys, and I've learned a thing or two about football, but I only paid about $15 for this football. But if you were to put it in somebody's hands like maybe Tom Brady, this football would be worth about $40 million. Yeah, in my hands, not so much. In somebody famous's hands, somebody who has the ability for that, much more. Now, what about this golf club? Well, I am not very good at golf. Not that I'm good at basketball or football either, but golf I'm even less good at. This probably cost about 60 bucks, right? In my hands, you'd be not probably getting your money's worth out of it. But in somebody's hands like Tiger Woods, you could get about $80 million. It would be worth about $80 million. It depends on whose hands it's in. Now let's take a look here. Now I don't know if you can see it very well, but I have some nails. Now once again, I'm probably more skilled with these than with these things. But these are about 5 cents each. They're not worth a whole lot. And you know, I could probably use them to make something, make like a birdhouse or something a little bit handy that way. It wouldn't be worth a whole lot, but I could still maybe do something out of it. But you know, these same 3 nails in Jesus's hand can save the entire world from sin. The same 3 nails that I could not do much with could save the world from sin. Put our bad times in the hands of Jesus, the bad times that we go through like Job. Whenever we put those bad times in the hand of Jesus, he can make something priceless out of it. Whereas in our hands, we might make a mess. But in Jesus' hands, he can make something priceless out of it. So have you put your life in God's hands? You know, he can make our bad times into something really good. The Bible even says that he takes those things that were meant for evil, those things that were to destroy us, and he can turn them around to make something good out of them. That's the story of Job. Job continued to worship regardless of the fact that everything had been taken from him, because he put his life in God's hands. Job put his life in God's hands, and he continued to worship him in both good times and bad. Are you going to put your life in God's hands and allow him to take your good times and your bad times and turn them into something good? That is true worship. When we can take our bad times and we can turn them over to God and say, I've made a mess of it. Do what you can, God. And he can take it and turn it into something beautiful. Bye, guys.